This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Robin Jackson for the first time. I want to welcome you to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. This seems like a really creative, cool community, and I'm excited to contribute.
Yeah, we love to talk to creative people. We've been on the air since 2016. We have over 1,200 episodes, and we've always had a sweet spot for talking to musicians. That's where the podcast started, talking to singer-songwriters
Right
and
on.
emerging singer-songwriters, creative people of all types. But you're an award-winning songwriter, multi-instrument. You play multiple instruments. You're an entrepreneur. You're a community builder. So you're right in the same space we like to talk to. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, it's totally my pleasure. I love talking about anything having to do with music, creativity, art, community, songwriting. Yeah, totally. Let's go.
So, like, how to use music and creativity and flow state to lead a more fulfilling life is kind of the topic. And
Yeah.
we've got your URL, Songwriter Story. Right?
Yeah, if you can say it, you can play it. That's I know.
Yeah.
That's the name of my my organization, my business, Songwriter Soiree, which is a community of songwriters that I started in Portland, Oregon, where I live over 16 years ago. And so yeah.
And you've worked with a lot of artists that would name check like Reggie Watts.
Yeah, Reggie.
Devotchka,
which they did the soundtrack for the movie Little Miss Sunshine, and I've played many shows with them. They're old friends of mine. Yeah,
you got like 60 million streams on your single Roses and
Gold. Yeah, there's a story behind that.
Yeah. So that's cool. So yeah, I'm more of a underground kind of like a niche artist. I'm a eccentric experimental type of synthesis.
Cool.
But but I appreciate all music, and that's why I'm talking to people who are in this space. But I am a big fan of flow state, of kind of from a
cool
kind of from a I like to just go with an open canvas. I always think of music as a sort of sound painting.
Yeah,
and just let it happen, and then kind of go back and pick out the happy accidents.
The happy accidents, I love that, which totally is something that happens in flow state when you're not thinking about it. And I just read 12 Notes by Quincy Jones, who's like, if you don't know Quincy Jones, you need to know Quincy Jones, the godfather of music pretty much in the 21st century. And in that book he has a whole section on flow state. And flow state something I've been studying and wanting to live for decades. And I just love, he just talks so much about his music process. And I just finished listening to it, so it's kind of alive for me, where he's like, I don't produce anything anymore that's not written from flow state. And if you're not sure what flow state is, it's that state that's it's kind of only come into like life hacking and creativity in the last 30 years, but it's the alpha state, so the state between sleep and wake, when you're kind of in your zone of genius and you're not and you're not driven by your mental frontal cortex, you're more in your subconscious, but you're awake.
You're kind of pulling your subconscious. It's like,
like
95% of your brain is devoted to your subconscious. And the problem is your logical mind will kind of wreck you. To me, when I'm a musician, when I talk to artists, like what I find is like, if you put your 10,000 hours in on your instrument, right?
Yeah.
And you know your instrument and you trust yourself on your instrument, if you get so caught up in trying to be the perfection trap, or you get caught up in the composition trap, like if I just let my multi-tracks just like hit play, jump on my piano or my synth and play with like sound design for like hours, and just let something happen, and then usually out of that session, I find something
cool. And your happy accidents.
Yeah, and I find that you've talked to Herbie Hancock, the stuff that Sun Ra was doing, or you talk to like Miles Davis. You check what they said about their processes. Like in some of the most famous pieces of music that Miles worked on, it was like pretty much all flow state. It was like they had like awesome musicians, and they had a little bit of a roadmap, but they kind of let it go by feel.
Yes.
And kind of like the feel and the interplay between the musicians kind of dictated what they were going to do.
Yeah. I mean, you can hear it in like every John Coltrane solo. He's lost in a world of himself. That's brilliant.
He gets in the zone. I mean, you get that zone.
You get in the zone. Yeah. I'm a saxophone player. That's my main instrument. And I just
poetry
totally
is the
know. It's like you get in the zone, the hours go by, and you just get into that like subtle conversation with other musicians where you're not really listening with your mind anymore. You're really just listening with your body and your feeling, and there's just nothing better. Yeah,
like Charlie Bird Parker is like
yeah.
in the
So
same kind of zone.
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I love Charlie. So I wanted to circle back. The thing with Quincy is that he just really like, he composed the way that he composes his music is he sits with his head between his hands, staring at the floor. And people would go into sessions with him and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Are you asleep?" And he'd be like, "No, this is where my genius comes from, in this position." And for him, it was a place where he would kind of almost fall asleep, but he would just hear so many things. And I just found that, such a good reminder. And then he noticed whenever he produced something that didn't give him goosebumps versus did, it was such a big difference. And usually his goosebump material, he'd call it, always came from when he was in flow state. So
yeah, I have a big when I check out bands I really like, and I look at like people like the Velvet Underground,
oh yeah,
like and even Bob Dylan and his process,
yeah,
with the band at Big Pink. A lot of that was kind of just flow state in the moment. Just like he would be at his typewriter, come up with an idea, and then they just go at it. And he would just, and a lot of stuff Dylan would come to him, and he kept on changing the lyrics. He would change the song. I had like an engineer on that worked on like Blood on the Tracks, like the first version.
Great album.
And he said like the musicians working with Dylan were having a hard time because he was like composing in the moment. He didn't really know what it was.
Cool.
And they wanted to know what it was. And it's like, well, it is what it is. It's like I'm writing it right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's because he was in it. And I really believe like when you immerse yourself in something a lot, that you're gonna change. Like you're really like, when I go into songwriting, I don't really write songs like randomly. I have to kind of go into like what I call a songwriting zone, which usually takes me about 4 days to lead up to, where I just go through a bunch of crap and like stuff. And I was reading, actually, there's a great book produced in the 80s called Songwriters on Songwriting, which is people like Dylan and Paul Simon and Joan Baez revealing their songwriting process. And I really related to that. For me, it's like I go through this period of time that I call composting, which is like getting all the crap out of the way, out of my brain. And then I get into like a flow zone where I'm kind of in this liminal space. And I think that's a space that Dylan often talked about, where he would immerse himself so much in the work of other people and in music that he always just had like piles of words floating around his head.
He would read. He was a voracious reader.
Yeah.
And then he also had picked up all these other styles, right, from other people. He had kind of gone to Tim Pan Alley and picked up all these styles, and then listened to all these, like all this R&B and all this Delta blues and all this stuff. America, like all over the place. It's like all his influences are coming from like every which way, and then synthesized it like in the moment of each song. Like, well, this song deserves this. This song deserves that. And it kind of like whatever the song deserves is where it will get.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's a cool thing, because I think a lot of people, like, I think you're trying to get people to get into their flow state.
Yes.
People have a feel like I have never had a problem writing. Like I have a bedroom studio because I write so much. And I got like 5,000 songs.
Amazing. Oh my God. Cool.
And so I write all the time. I write 4 or 5 songs a week. That's not a problem for me because I found a way to kind of get past that wall.
So that's probably what a lot of people are interested in. I was just on another podcast a while ago where it was by a woman who's a neuroscientist, and she was studying flow state, and she wanted to know a lot of like, how do I help people get into flow state? And I'd love to offer a couple of things around that, which I think, first of all, if for all you songwriters out there, or anyone who's creative, which is, you can be creative in business, whatever, we often try and think our way through creativity or think our way through projects. And I've learned that when I'm having writer's block, which I don't really think exists at all, I think the block we have is either it's fear of failure, or wanting it to be too good. But more often, and what Quincy Jones talks about, is that you're probably just not in your flow state enough. And that consider, instead of trying to like sit there and like arduously force yourself through like getting a lyric or the music, like change your physical state in some way to help you get more into like an alpha state. And he was like, I think he said some quote, something like, the next time you think you have writer's block, consider instead that maybe all you need to do is get into an alpha state so you can hear what your heart really wants to tell you. And I just thought that was so beautiful, because we're often in our mind and our heart is like in that subconscious under there trying to get a message through.
I always felt like, the Victorians had this idea of the muse.
Yeah.
And I always felt like artists have a way to channel, right, that connection. And that connection is not just external. Like the muse isn't this external thing. There's this inner and there's the outer. And then there's like 95% of your subconscious. And when you're willing to not play it safe, to not be ruled by fear, and to actually call into that and pull, like I just like to do an open mic. And I've done this with a lot of people I've been playing since I was 17. I'm 57. And, every musician I've ever liked to work with, I like to have like open sessions and let everybody just kind of bring their ideas to the table. And instead of just coming with a demo and kind of top down in it, with some people I've worked with, that's what they do. They come with this pre-designed idea and they want everybody to match what's in their head rather than listening to in the moment what you could actually produce. I think that ends up being the problem, is that you get the perfection trap or comparison trap. You're trying to get to the perfect notes on the page instead of actually being in the moment. I think if you can't accept the moment, then you're probably going to run into a trap or run into a restriction or a ceiling, and you're not going to produce.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. I love that, just that thing of like being in the moment. And that's so much about the creative process is saying yes to the moment and letting go of what you think you need something to be. And so I went to jazz school. And so it took me years to sort of like start letting go of just letting my instrument guide me, and
that's a hard thing.
I wanted to get all the arpeggios right and like outline the key perfectly and play the rhythmic features that I was taught.
Or like the classical music trap. Like if you're playing Bach or Beethoven, but versus like if you're in a more experimental group, like I'm a experimental synthesis guy.
Okay.
And I play with modular synths and analog oscillators.
Cool.
And I let my mode kind of tell me what it wants to do.
That's awesome.
And so if you're in that kind of space, the thing sounds different every time you turn it on.
Yeah.
And it behaves different all the time. And some people want to tame it. If you come from the mindset, then you want a digital synth and you want samples and you want this. But if you're willing to let the oscillator drift actually be inspirational, or let the patchwork kind of lead you somewhere strange, that's a different type of trip. Trying to tame it. I think you're trying to tame it, then it's like, okay, there's a place for that. You want to create something very precise, but that's, I think there's a lot of traps in that to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So grief and art. I always I always felt like grief is like in the your little handy bag of ideas as a songwriter.
Always. most songwriters, yes. Unless you're Rafi, maybe.
Maybe funk can come from joy. It can come from pain. I love funkadelic. I love
funk. Totally.
James Brown stuff, like, so you can come from that space, or you can be like a Delta blues guy, be in the depths of like,
depths of sorrow.
Depths of sorrow, or you can actually have a more elation or Stevie Wonder mindset.
Yes,
where everything's about, like we can elevate.
Past it. What's the beauty in there? And
Yeah.
I like looking at a lot of my, I've got several records out, and I have a theme in my songwriting, which I really love. And I love hearing it when I hear it in other songwriters, as this sort of medicine of music to transmute hard things, grief, into beauty. And I think the beauty of the song is being able to, I mean, you can just go with like Adele, which is just like, oh, this hurts. But, a lot of my songs, I love finding the silver lining in them, which is the name of my last album. Because I think songs for me help me process really hard moments, and then through the songwriting process, I really often, find sort of like a lesson or a growth or a way to hold a perspective of my life differently.
It's
And
like art therapy. It's cathartic.
yeah, it's therapy. I mean, I've had a lot of songwriters like my guitar is my therapist, and and I think so many people can relate to that. For me,
jazz is kind of like that. It feels like that's what people are working out their issues.
Oh, totally. I love it. That's funny. I get together a couple times a month with some jazz friends of mine, and we hang out in my living room, and we just like get really weird for a couple hours, and it's total like therapeutic release, or in a space where like anything goes. I just
It's like modal jazz or fusion jazz. Is like I like being able to go into cacophony, dissonance, and disharmony, and then bring it back to harmony.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you can go and you kind of do a Coltrane, kind of really stretching it.
Yeah.
And then bring it back to something thematic, but then kind of go off. And then I like the ability to have these movements or key changes or to be mood changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of modern music is so into the loop, is so into the groove.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have like the movements. I grew up with the Carpenters.
Oh, cool.
And what I loved is like you had Karen Carpenter could take a happy vocal, but her voice evokes like melancholy and sadness.
Totally. They put
her brother had these awesome ways to arrange some of the great stuff he was getting. He would just rearrange it.
Yeah, arranging is such a powerful tool.
Yeah, to match her voice.
That's cool.
And that to me is just something I don't hear in pop music, like what the Carpenters could do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking like, can you evoke like that?
That's cool, man. I like that perspective. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a formula these days, which is, I think my mom's generation is often like, man, music is just so recycled, and you wouldn't think it would. We've only been around doing this thing for not that many years, a handful of years, but the current like section of time that we're in, it's like, are we already out of ideas, like in terms of pop?
Oh, it seems like the 50s to me is everybody's gone into this kind of pop mode,
right?
Or kind of groove mode.
Yeah, the rock and roll. There's a framework.
It's back to like an album that didn't have a theme, not like Sgt. Pepper's.
Yes.
I think the Beatles brought the album that could be more introspective. They actually created like the concept album.
Totally. I mean, they were groundbreaking in so many ways. I love them.
Abbey Road.
They've influenced so much of my songwriting.
Abbey Road and White Album, like they were like not Pink Floyd actually tightened it up. The Who, with their rock operas, and Tommy and Quadrophenia, they actually
and Queen,
they set the tone for that structure. But the Beatles were the ones to actually start it.
Yes,
it was like the sound painting. That George Martin even talked about it.
Yeah,
that you could be expressionistic in music.
Yeah,
that you could have color things and then represent more than what you could do live in the studio. You could actually create like these layers of sound that are the same as like layers of paint, and create these sound paintings. And Hendrix talked about it too. And I always felt that like, well, where's that? Yeah. Where are people wanting to do that?
It's out there, I'm sure. I mean, in these day and age too, there's just there's so many people doing music.
It's just not hitting to the top. I talk to musicians.
You don't get all of it because you just kind of get what's trending on TikTok or whatever. But all the jazz artists, I mean, I used to remember when there was an era when jazz was the most popular music in America, like
we're not really there anymore.
Like that Count Basie was like pop music,
Yeah, we're in a niche now. It's a
I
niche.
know.
It's a niche, but it's a big niche. But it's I think to me it's like music is life and life is music.
Yeah.
And the idea of a sound painting, the visualization of what
I love that image.
I
love that. And being able to popularize a music like that. Like we haven't really had a band like the Beatles in a while who were so groundbreaking and at the forefront of everything in terms of experimentation. I mean, they started kind of normal for the time.
They were kind of a pop band.
But then they became
like the original teen popper band.
Yeah. But then they became so famous they could do whatever they wanted, So I'm like, when is Taylor Swift gonna get weird? Like, she's got the audience. She's not gonna lose people. Like, come on.
We got the bands like they're kind of standard bearers of that, like the Wilcos, the Radioheads.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they'll do stuff that's experimental, and I'm all over that because
that's true. Radiohead's out there.
Yeah, they're kind of continuing like what could you do?
Yeah.
You know, they're always, you know, especially I'm a synthesist. I love the synthesis stuff they do with like the modular stuff they do and the experimental stuff they're willing to do on stage.
Yeah.
And just kind of go beyond what the original recording is. And I just like to see people kind of stretch, because I think it's like you know, music has become so disposable. And everybody's kind of like, oh, it's a background for me jogging or cooking.
I know.
Doing something other than listening to it.
Totally. I think a lot of musicians, I always think like the greatest gift you can give a musician besides money, I think, is putting on a pair of really good headphones and listening to their whole album while doing nothing else. And
I've kind of said that, you know, today people don't understand that an album is like the great American novel.
It's like somebody writing a book. You pour years, decades of your life into this thing that you're crafting. And if you actually take the time to listen to the nuances that go into, I just did an album earlier this year, and like the amount of time that my mixer like did his genius editing, I'm just like, I would love to do like a 4-hour presentation on like the way that he stacked my clarinet, you know, over like 15 clarinet harmonies in this incredible way, creating this pattern.
That's behind the music stuff I like to do. Like I like to go into the depth, like what, you know, like I was watching this documentary on by Peter Gabriel. He was talking about the shadow vocals. He was talking about how a drum part, they actually went and they took tape and they cut it up.
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
They mixed it all around. They actually took the slices of the physical tape for the drum tracks and moved them around.
Wow.
And actually put them in out of order.
Oh my
gosh. Totally non-sequential order, just to see what would happen, kind of like a Brian Eno at
that's the amazing
experiment.
With
and
tape.
That's the kind of stuff I like, that people are willing to go to that depth for their art.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you only listen to the single, you don't get that.
You don't get it. You don't get behind the scenes. Like, if I had the resource, I mean, I thought about like really making little mini documentaries for every song. You know, I would have loved to have done that for my last record, just to like show people like, do you really understand like what's going on here?
Well, I think it's useful because video is so big today.
Yeah.
If you could get kids today to understand the level of work that goes into a song,
it's amazing.
You know, that it's not a throwaway thing, because it's been kind of demonetized.
Yeah.
Because of Napster, because of streaming, and the art we create is not valued like if you go and look at a video game, Nintendo can get $90 for Mario Kart.
Totally. Yeah.
But we can't get $5. You can't get 99 cents for a song. You get
no way.
It's way to pay $20 for a shirt.
It's really
like the guy who goes, sure, I can get somebody to buy this.
Yeah, we're in the like
buy the song.
Yeah. No, I hear you. A song which someone's poured like 10 grand into in like 5 years. You know, but we're just in the worst framework for music business right now in terms of the streaming culture that's ever been for musicians. It's just really unfortunate. So
but that's why it's interesting, because you've got this whole idea of having a process to get people to kind of treat it like you do, like a retreat. Is that what you do?
Yeah, so I do. So I've run a whole songwriting community. I created a space which was born out of my own journey as a songwriter way back in 2009, when I was starting to play more of like intimate songs. I felt nervous about playing them in front of people, so I created this event in my living room called the Songwriter Soiree, and I invited the most well-known songwriters I could find and a bunch of friends over. 50 people showed up, and we created this really amazing space, which blew up into this whole underground cult, like monthly gathering with cameos, and Portlandia came and filmed it. And it was just, it was this whole thing. And so then I started doing retreats. So I do these 2 big songwriting retreats every year with 100 people from all over the country. And we have amazing teachers, and it's a 4-day deep dive. And yeah, in that space, there's really, space for people to connect and drop into their flow state and stretch their boundaries and play with each other and collaborate.
It's very creative because I think that's what we have to do as creators.
Yeah.
We have to find new ways to connect our art to the world.
Yeah.
And make it so it has like a value proposition. Now, we don't. We're not a widget. We're not
exactly.
we really value what we're doing, but like there, like you're sharing like your lessons learned. You're creating a space like like a collective. Like I like
it's kind of a collective.
Yeah, I like to go and play like with a bunch of electronic bands in New York. Like I'll go play with like instead of going with just me, I'll go with like 4 or 5 other bands.
Yeah.
And kind of have that collective space. Because then there's less room to like, oh, we can jam together. We don't know what's going to come from that. And then we might go work on a record together. We might work on a project. I might do keys on their thing and they might
do
that to me is kind of like, back in the day, the CBGB kind of scene.
Yeah.
Where you had the Talking Heads and the Ramones.
Totally.
And television. It's like there was a lot of cross-pollination going on with ideas, even though, you might not have realized that they were all talking to each other, bouncing things off each other.
Totally. People in the same genre and world, they all hang out. And so, I want to support a lot of songwriters feel isolated. They don't know where to play their music. They don't know how to get a band going. And so we get them all in the same space and they all connect now. A bunch of them have started bands. There's 2 of them that have started their own weekly and monthly gatherings online and in person. There's all these collaborations happening. People in different cities meet up. They're like, oh yeah, I went to the songwriting retreat. Oh yeah, me too. There's like an instant trust built.
Yeah.
And it's this whole community network, kind of like a church or a football team or like music,
Well, we musicians always we become the fans of each other.
We become the fans of each other.
It's kind of like
we all play in each other's stuff.
Remember, like everybody said, Lou Reed said, like everybody, all these bands said that they were inspired by me. I wish I got paid for that.
I know, right? I know. You just have to, as an artist, you have to just know that you're gonna steal and you're gonna give and you're gonna get. Yeah.
But I think it's just awesome to like just get into the idea of deconstructing like the creative process and starting to really unpack it so people, because there's like some people have like this fear of the entry point, right? They don't give themselves the permission. Because I know a bunch of guys that they got their guitars are sitting in their basement or their garage and they just stopped.
Yeah.
And I never stopped because I love to play just to play.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to make money or not, I just play all the time. I'm just going to play because I love to play.
Yeah.
Some people like, well, why are you doing the music? Like, why are you in the creativity? Like, sometimes if you realize it's part of your cathartic process or it's part of something that you love, and you can actually understand like what is it the reason why you're in it, versus is it just like pay to play? If you don't hit this mark, then you're done.
No, I think a lot of people. I love that you're really clued into like a lot of stuff that I'm interested in. Like permission is a huge word. A lot of people don't really give themselves permission, or they don't want to play unless they know people are listening or they're going to make it in some way. And a lot of the folks that come to my events are, they're like procrastinating. They don't have motivation, but there's this part of them like eating them up inside. Like I need to express myself, but I just don't know how to do my creativity. And a lot of what we do is we create the space. I really think like a lot of it's creating the right space for people, one that's supportive and safe and non-judgmental, where they realize they can mess up and they're going to be cheered instead of booed, and they're going to be supported no matter what. And we do this thing in the beginning of our retreats where we have everyone, I learned this at a youth camp I used to teach at. We have everyone reach in their back pocket and pull out their cool card. and their cool card is like a card everyone carries, which keeps you cool, but it also keeps you from like having fun and taking risks and, fear of judgment. And we do a whole ritual wherever we get everyone to hold up their card and they tear it up together. And we give them permission to be like total dorks,
but that's the whole thing.
5 days.
I mean, Frank Zappa, if he was worried about that, then we wouldn't have anything.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like some people you just have to put it out there and not make it about you. and just think like, how am I contributing to the space rather than like what I hope people think I'm
there's no
cool.
bad note. There's an opportunity. The way I look
I
at it
love
is
it.
like that a lot of times, especially like in fusion jazz, there's like the idea of Hancock and
Yeah, no bad.
Miles Cook. There's no
Yeah,
bad news because like you can if when you're playing live like that, like modal jazz or experimental electronic, like whatever comes about, like you take advantage of that detuned note
yes.
and you go with it. Like I
You
love
go with
the
it.
fact that like my Moog, I'll kind of detune things on purpose, like
Uh-huh.
detune the oscillators, be a little off,
Yeah.
just because that's gonna bring the character, that brings the color. And if I'm like in that moment, that detuned oscillator, that kind of phasing in and out, or like
Totally.
something being a little strange, like how LFO treating something a little different than this thing, or triggering something else, is like that's the fun in how you come up with your secret sauce.
Yeah.
And your
There
secret sauce is gonna be like this unknown, not found sound.
yeah.
And the problem is everybody wants the found sound.
Everyone wants to
And if they the unfound sound, unknown sound like that is scary, and so
Ooh,
you're
yeah.
kind of gonna hide it, or you embrace it.
Yeah,
So
embrace it. Well, there's that Miles Davis quote. It's not the note you play that's the wrong note. It's the note you play after that note that determines whether it's right or wrong.
yeah, that's an opportunity, because it's an
Yeah.
opportunity to
So
evolve the piece.
you make a choice, and then you have a response to it, and redirect it.
You
And
can
that's just such a
redirect it.
great
Yeah.
life lesson. I mean, it's such a great life lesson about life, like how you do anything in life.
It's
It's
like
not. Yeah.
if you're an athlete, you study all the plays.
Yeah.
But if this team you're going against does a play you don't recognize, are you just gonna throw it up and say, I don't know how to run?
Exactly.
That's the same thing a musician does, that they heard a note that wasn't expected, and they go with what would work with that
Yeah.
versus what was planned.
Yeah.
If you stay wedded to what was planned, it's like a TEDx speaker, reading, like they had this idea, but they read the crowd and say, "Well, that's not working." It's like
Uh-huh.
like a comedian that's doing a bad, like,
Totally.
it's
You can't just stick to it.
yes, just stick to it. You stick to it, you're gonna go down in flames.
Yeah.
So you think so are you gonna stick to it because that's what was on the page, or are you gonna go with what you feel?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it is like, learn how to be in touch with the feelings
Yeah.
and the vibes
Yeah. And that's a
and
huge part.
frequency.
Life lessons from music, man. Learn how to be in touch with the feelings and the vibes. Learn how to listen. I learned from a friend of mine who's a professional comedy improv artist, and she can never mess up on stage. It's impossible for her to do that.
Yeah.
And because she's so good at taking whatever happens in the
Choose.
audience
Yeah,
and
pick it
using
up
it
on
into comedy. And I've seen people like just scream at her, like crazy people from the audience, and just I've seen her like mess up so many times, and
the covers.
she doesn't just cover, she uses it as kindling
That's
to
the
make the
next
fire
yeah, that's
bigger.
the next thing.
It's like
Yeah,
if the mistake hadn't happened, it would have been fine,
what
but
triggers the next move?
we
It's like
welcome the mistake actually made the show better because it allowed her to be even more authentic. And so yeah, so life lessons from music, like when your life messes up, like
well, that's the opportunity
how can you look
because
at it? And I think we all struggle with that when life messes up, we can feel like a victim or it can take the wind out of our sails. But it's really like that spiritual path as humans of like how can you breathe with it, feel into what else is happening in your life, and let it lift you higher.
but it's like
So
James Taylor, like when I've seen Fire, I See
I
Rain,
see rain. That's
right,
a
right,
great.
and it came from like a lot of the depths of the things he was going through, right?
Yeah.
And when he got married and got happy, he did an album that did not resonate because
Yep.
his fans actually liked when he was in more dark places,
More of a
and
melancholic.
where he had been able to evoke from those dark places like songs like when I seen Fire, I See Rain, but
Yeah.
when he had songs that were more happy,
Yeah.
they didn't dig it.
I know.
Now, that do you want to be in that place all the time, but it kind of shows you that sometimes, what resonates is like the feelings that people, a lot of fans, they have the everybody's gone through that,
Yeah.
and people want things that kind of validate their feelings.
Yeah.
And I think music is so personal when you find songs that kind of validate your experience and becomes like your soundtrack to your
Absolutely.
life.
Absolutely. There's science that's like shows you, of course, you probably know it, like when you're sad and you listen to a sad song, it makes you happy. It's like the two negatives equal a positive kind of thing, because it gives you a place to relate to it and get it out of you. And when something outside of you is expressing the way you feel, you don't feel so alone. And so
Yeah,
that's why sad songs tend to be more popular than happy songs.
yeah.
And why most people's songs tend to be heartbreakers.
But the exception is funk.
With the exception of funk. Oh my, I
Yeah,
used to be so into Parliament, and I just
I
was
just
like,
love. But the thing about funk is kind of strange because like funk has that beat that's like gonna make you want to get up
yeah,
and really tear the roof off. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But the fact is, like in it, you can be kind of you can be saying things like you can have a
totally.
dichotomy. You could have this very upbeat thing, but then you could be saying something.
And I love that. I love that
The duality.
juxtaposition.
Yeah, the duality of it. Like,
Yeah,
the people like to play with duality.
yeah. I
Like, you
love
could
the
have a very
happy.
upbeat track, but the
Uh-huh.
lyrics could be really down.
It could be really down. Yeah, yeah. Or the other way around.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you can have
happen.
it, like, both ways, and, like
I
and so
love
you
it.
can
I
say
love that
things
though.
and
Yeah, yeah. So that's cool. I love what you were saying about like about tuning into the vibe and listening. It made me think about one of the lessons that I love that I think I've learned the most from music is how to listen in life. And when you're so here I'll use a story. I used to play with this guy who was a phenomenal trumpet player. Like he shredded me. But I think other people in my band were better musicians than him, and he thought he was the best musician, and I was like, well, you're not really. You know how to play your instrument better, but you're not. A good musician is somebody that is, it's about the connection and the community and the listening. So I was like, if you had a conversation like the way you're playing, you wouldn't really have any friends because you wouldn't have any space for other people to
oh, yeah, like it's
speak. And
even
so
like, yeah.
it's about giving space. When you're a musician, I think the thing I love to do the most is to just listen. I play in this improv group called Everyone Orchestra, which is a really cool band. It's led by this guy who tours all over the world, and he goes to an event and finds all the best musicians at like a music festival and
Yeah.
puts them all together on stage, and the whole set is improvised.
Yeah, it's kinda like what Miles used to do is put all these great people around him,
Yeah,
and he wasn't always showboating, like, he's letting
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
say
yeah.
and the idea,
Giving everyone a chance. Yeah,
like, I love about the story about, like, Robbie Robertson.
I
Robbie
love, yeah,
Robertson
Robbie Robertson.
wasn't a speed demon, wasn't one of these
No,
wasn't like a Hendrix, right? But he let the rest of the band be
yeah,
able to kind of be there.
yeah,
He let, like, Manuel and all those great guys in that band. I mean, everybody was great.
yeah.
Everybody was great, and he let everybody have their way to shine in the songs.
He
And
knew.
his stuff is very understated,
Yeah,
his
he was
guitar
in service of the music and the
yeah,
experience for the audience, not himself. And
yeah,
that is what makes a good musician and I think a good person. When you can be thinking, I think humans are so self-centered in general.
yeah,
and we could save ourselves a lot of pain, myself included, when instead of thinking like, oh, I'm so insecure, I'm a victim, what do people think of me? Like, how can I be uplifting this moment? How can I give a gift to somebody right now? Who needs what? Where's the quietest voice in the room? How can I amplify something?
yeah,
And
I
I
think
think,
everybody
yeah,
kinda like, I loved about The Who is, like, they were all going, like, their own way.
yeah,
Like, if you think about The Who, compared to any big rock band, everybody's soloing at the
right.
same time.
That's true.
And it's like they're all getting out. They're all like lead bass, lead drummer,
Uh huh.
and maybe Pete is the only one not really being playing as much lead. He's
Yeah,
actually kind of facilitating. He not showboating, and Moon was showboating more than him.
but
And
they knew
plus,
how to weave, kind of
yeah,
like
it's a weave.
kind of like a New Orleans Dixieland group. They
Yeah,
they knew how to weave around each other.
they weave that kind of independence of like
Yeah,
it's a progressive band that's kind of a punk rock band.
yeah,
It's like they're doing rock operas, but they got a punk aesthetic.
yeah. It's
Like,
it's
how's
pretty
that? That's
cool.
like a dichotomy. It's like, how can you do that?
Genius. Yeah,
Yeah, I just love to see people kind of be able to get, like, the best out of, like, everybody.
yeah,
Like you say, if you can be in a group that actually can get everybody to pull their A game or better.
Yeah.
And you're not suppressing people and push, saying like, oh, no, don't, you know, you just have this kind of really let everybody shine and see what happens.
It's the best. I have a band and they're all amazing musicians and I love just giving them all moments and I don't want it to be about me as much. I know I always love playing with people better than me because it just pushes me.
Makes you better.
Yeah, I always did. I always looked for the groups I could join where they were better players than me and it pushes me. So
yeah, I think that's the whole creative philosophy.
Yeah.
I think everybody is creative. I think there's a lot of people that say they can't, that they won't, they have no ability.
Oh yeah, I was going to speak to that. Thanks. You're bringing up all sorts of great topics, man. I appreciate it. It's like I was like, who is this guy? I don't know much about him, but yeah, you're totally on that. I can't agree more. I think that everybody's creative. There is a thing in our culture, especially I think around like creativity is sort of reserved for like a chosen few.
Yeah, everybody's got to be Oscar Wilde,
but
Wells.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing though. I mean, in America, it's like we live in a place of like idolizing the one. You just look at our TV shows and the media we're fed, and other cultures are more egalitarian around that and sort of.
Yeah, I lived in the East. I lived in Tokyo. So
that's cool. That's cool.
For 2 years. Awesome. So there's a little more of societal recognition of not just the individual but the whole.
The whole, yeah, the whole.
And there's less, in the you go east and you'll start to see more of that.
Even more, yeah.
Yeah, here the individualism is to the detriment of the entire group sometimes, because I was a sociology major in like microcosm, macrocosm.
Oh, that's cool. I studied ethnomusicology and anthropology, so that's some crossover.
Yeah, it's like the microcosm affects the macrocosm, macrocosm affects the microcosm. Everybody's like, oh, suffering from anomie, and everybody's like got their own trip here.
Yeah,
we tend to get motivated by like the wolf at the door.
Yeah.
And everybody wants the sameness, but then they say they want the individual. They say they want the creative person, but they put them in a cube.
Yep.
9 to 5 is like, if you want like somebody to be like Steve Jobs, it's not going to happen in the cube.
No. Oh my gosh. No, totally. You want it's because they want the control and the system. But I mean, there are leaders that recognize the benefits of helping people be creative and creating creative environments that stimulate creativity. If I ever like owned a big business with lots of employees, I'd put like trampolines and like rose gardens in there, and like places with like marimbas people could play during lunch break.
Like it's the reveal. Like in my day job, I'm into software design.
Okay.
And I'm working with like a smaller startup, and I kind of made a choice to go with smaller companies instead of being with the big guys. Because what I found is the big guys will say they want to be like the startups, but they're not.
Right.
They try to say they can do it, and they'll get whole directors and divisions saying that they are, and then they're not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'll be where that really is happening. So you go to the place where the people allow you to wear a lot of hats based on whatever is needed. And if you can ramp up, you can do it.
Yeah.
And so like in that kind of environment, you can, show off your skill set and not feel afraid to speak up in a meeting where you
got to create the space for creativity to be allowed. And that means being allowed to make mistakes. And, I think being creative is like, allowing people to make mistakes and have it be objective and like anything goes, and like be curious, like, oh, well, look at that. Okay.
Well, and if you're an inventor, if you're in design, in software, we have iterative agile development, which means we go with multiple iterative steps, right? And it's not always like this whole waterfall thing where everything was like got to be perfect.
No. Oh my God. Well, for every produced Beatles song, there was 20 that were never recorded.
Yeah. I mean, if you go look at Prince, like look at the output he had. Like there's 8,000 songs that were never released.
Yes, it's insanity.
Right. So think about what he was holding back versus what he put out.
Yeah.
Right. So for every song he did, he had this 8,000, 10,000 sitting in the can.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, look at Hendrix. I got all this
That's
old
crazy.
Hendrix. he has massive amounts of like I was listening to outtakes from like Electric Lady, and he's got all these variations of the solos they would have done
Oh,
versus the one that he actually put on the
that's
record.
awesome.
But they're all great, but it's like there was something he was
Uh-huh.
looking for.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know what he was looking for, but I guess that's what he put out is what he was looking for.
Yeah.
Everything else is like it sounds good to me. I could have used that, but it's like well, he didn't think it was right. But that's the thing. That's
Yeah.
people don't understand that how
Yeah.
much work goes into it.
Yeah. And a lot of people have a hard time taking risks, or they're not encouraged in their schooling and our society to be creative and to like have that flow. And I one of the ways that I like to help people be more creative in their lives is through taking risks, little risks in your everyday life.
The wins. So
Yeah, so like singing in the car, or I don't know, like doing stuff with I do a lot of stuff with people's voices, because a lot of people have vocal blocks, and I think a quick way to access your creativity is through singing. And so I encourage people to like sing about mundane things in their life, like make up a song when they're vacuuming, or
to get used to their singing voice.
Yeah,
I think that's always like the big permission thing. I always talk to a lot of songwriters, like when they finally realized or gave themselves permission to sing their own song.
Yes.
Or to sing something and actually try that voice.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that thing with like, well, you get a Lou Reed, you get a Dylan, but that is not the normal singing voice.
No.
And so there's somebody had to make, and that gave a permission structure. Like Lou Reed gave a permission structure for like the whole indie world.
Yeah.
And so did Dylan gave that permission structure. So many other songwriters came along and said, hey, I don't have to have a perfect pitch voice.
No, I just have the spirit.
You just have the spirit. Be like Joe Strummer from the Clash.
Yeah.
We're the only band that matters. I don't care that I don't have a perfect pitch. I have something to say.
Yeah.
Joey Ramone. He's like, I'm going to just do it.
It's just the energy. It's their total persona and energy, and they own it. They just own themselves and the emotion,
Then you don't worry about it. That's what I liked about the punk aesthetic.
Yeah.
Was that you could get on the stage like Joey Ramone or like, Joe Strummer, think about Joy Division. All these guys suddenly got up and said, hey, I don't have to be like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. I don't have to be at that level. I don't have to be like, a Motown singer. And there was like this whole gate. Like if you can't be singing unless you're at like, Motown level.
Totally.
Like Stax level. The Frank Sinatra level. You can't get through the gate unless you're at that level. And then it became this new egalitarian thing.
Totally. Where
hip hop opened up for people.
Imperfect was cool.
Yeah. And then rap said, well, I can be a poet. I can be a street poet.
Yeah.
And I can just become a performer and just be a performer by kind of taking a Dylan aspect and just saying, I'm going to be a street poet and just say what I feel, like the modern folk music, hip hop.
There's a lot of permission givers out there, and there's a lot of there's this sort of cultural norm thing, and then I just praise those people that are brave enough to be themselves, and they kind of create a whole thing, and they kind of unlock a whole world for other people. It's amazing in my songwriting community how many I attract a lot of songwriters come into the community who are closet songwriters, or they're scared of being seen and being heard or playing their music. And so much of it is giving them feeling like they suddenly have permission to just be themselves. And
they have that open mic kind of
holding them back so much from their life. And then they come to our space and they're like, oh my God, everyone's so disarmed here. And they're celebrating not just imperfection, but they're celebrating disaster, Well,
you're giving them kind of like that coffee shop kind of art kind of like I used to live in like Northampton.
Oh,
Mass,
cool.
And they had these places where you could do like Fire and Water Cafe. You could just go and all these kids from Mount Holyoke and Smith would go in there and just be like beat poets, just go on stage, and musicians and people with guitars. And it gave a permission structure that people were very encouraging.
Yep.
And they would click in, and saying, yeah, that's cool. So you got to give people these spaces.
Yeah.
Where they can be disarmed and not feel like, they're going to get attacked.
Exactly. That's what we do at the monthly. I host a monthly event in Portland We usually get like 80 to 100 people every month, and we create a living room in this ballroom. We bring in couches and cushions, and we make it all comfy, and then we put all these posters all over the walls that are like positive affirmations and like stuff like, you know, mess up here, like safe space. And people come in there like, oh my God, I already feel welcome. And we just had a very common thing. Like we had a guy last week who played a great song. He was like, this was the first time I ever performed in front of anybody in my entire life in any way.
That's great that you gave
And
him.
I wrote, and all the songs have to be original. So it's his original. And I was like, and I asked him on stage, I was like, how was that for you? He was like, well, I felt like I was going to throw up, but I feel so free. And I've been coming to this event for 2 years, and I finally got the courage to come up
on stage
because I saw enough other people getting up on stage and crying and like, you know.
I just think it's great because I believe that's, you know, human creativity in this kind of indie space where people like the emerging songwriters. That's why I created this podcast. Is I don't need to push the list people or the B list people. I want to see where things are happening in the underground, in their emerging areas.
Yeah.
That's where like the salvation of the arts is, because that's where the new thing, that's where you get the new Dylan, the new Springsteen, the new whatever.
Yeah.
That's where it will come. Is if you encourage people to have that voice, then you'll get that unique spin, which is what to me is what I want to hear. I don't need to hear what's already out there.
The craft. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate this space, and I can tell you are a very thoughtful person. You bring a lot of cool perspectives, and you care a lot about music and creativity and people. And by doing the podcast, I imagine you just meet so many people, so you have a pretty in-depth perspective on humanity. You know,
it's just fun. It's like a master class in human
totally. Yeah.
And creativity. But I want people to know they can click on your link there.
Cool.
And that will be fully clickable. We've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will be on multiple podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon by tomorrow.
Awesome.
And thank you for being on the Fan Electric Ghost podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I just hope that anyone who's wanting to express their creativity, you do it. And if you need support, we're here for you. Check out my website for all the ways you can tap into our community from anywhere in the world.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, Keith.
Bye.